Galaxies and universe tried everything to make it work, but we can't stop. No, we can't stop the sky from falling.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Enlightened Mike podcast. My name's Tim. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely co-host, Carl. How's it going, Carl?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, Tim. How are you doing?
You know what? I could be doing worse. I'll say that much. Got to play Flesh and Blood this week. Got to record this podcast with you. So, I'd say it's all coming up aces or coming up Millhouse or whatever the saying is. I don't actually know. Yeah. We got a great show for you today. Carl, how was your week? What'd you get into? What Flesh and Blood did you play?
Yeah, good question. This week I was pretty busy with work, so I only got to do a couple of limited events at one of the local stores here, Geeks and Games. And I don't think we've talked about it much, but we'll get into a little bit who's on the team and kind of what their strengths are. And one of my major strengths is definitely limited. So I crushed the event, of course. Got a couple of cold foil young heroes that they had left over, and I ended up making a sealed with Dorinthia. Which some people say, Dorinthia, like how do you get enough Gogan on the weapon and stuff? And honestly, I didn't. I think I had 2 Gogan attacks for the entire sealed deck, but I played it like a Briar, where I'd run out 2 Scarfer Scars and then follow up with a Dawnblade, and it was actually pretty darn good. I hadn't played Dorinthia that way before.
What's crazy about Dorinthia too is like, and even in especially in limited, like thinking back to. Back in the Monarch meta, right? We had Chain, and there was people were like trying to play the Galaxy Black thing, but then they eventually settled on Nebula Blade because it was usually, especially with Seeds, it was usually like a pay 2 attack for 4 type thing. And so, of course, Rosetta Thorn is just absolutely insane, but that's neither here nor there. But something that I saw once that people, I think, didn't give enough respect to is they played the Reaping Blade because it always attacks for 3 and only for 1 resource, if I remember correctly. And you don't have to go through all the setup. And so, like, Dawnblade, if you can get some counters on it, whatever, but like that just seems pretty solid. So yeah, I love that strategy.
Yeah, it was a good time. I recall a turn, the one time where I got to attack twice with the Dawnblade. On the second hit, I used Refraction Bolters, and he goes, "You can't attack with it again." And I said, "I know." And then I followed up with an attack for 7. So it was pretty great. It was good Flesh and Blood. We had a good time. We had a little chuckle, but that was a fun time of playing some Sealed.
Yeah, it turns out Go Again just gives you another action point, actually. Actually action points. Awesome. And you just got out and it was just Welcome to Wraith Sealed, sounds like?
Yeah, so they had some extra Welcome to Wraith Cold Foil heroes, so they advertised for an additional Sealed. Geeks and Games here in Portland doesn't have a lot of people that go to the events, but they always have phenomenal prizes, so recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I've never actually been there, so I'll have to go and I'll have to go get it out there at some point. I think I've tried out pretty much every store that does Flesh and Blood events at this point. Besides, I haven't gone to an event at Gone Guy, but I have been to their space and it's really cool. And so I'll have to add Geeks and Games to the list.
There you go.
I got out to our local Fable Hobby Armory, played Prism. I lost to Katsu. I ended up going 2-1, getting a few prize packs, so it was fine. But valuable learning experience, especially with I was like, I'll just Phantasmal Footsteps in front of this attack. And I was pitching some of my, yellow auras or some of my no blocks for that. And then I realized it's he's never breaking the combat chain. And he's also I'm never getting a chance to use this other resource unless I've got another yellow aura and a blue to utilize that leftover floating resource. So I actually just the aggro Maxons, which is something that I really like about Flesh and Blood. I like that I can stop at the end of a game, flip over my deck, and just look at all the cards I pitched from the beginning of the game, and then go, oh right, I could have won this game because if I had pitched like this, or if I had played this card instead of playing this other card in this one situation, or I took too much damage to set up an aura or whatever. But even with any other deck too, that's what I love about Flesh and Blood is you can at the end of the game you can think about all your decisions and you can find usually a turning point where it's that was the point where I tilted the game in my opponent's favor, or that's the point of the game where I lost, right? It was good though. I love Fable. Love that like most of our Team Galaxy Brain kind of makes it out there. But speaking of Team Galaxy Brain, actually, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about them. So I'd love to give everybody a little bit of an intro. We didn't really do that last time, so it would be great to kind of go over who we are and what we do and why we came together and all that.
Yeah, we can just give it kind of a high level. I was going to say that Katsu is already a pretty tough matchup for Prism.
Yeah.
And you're not afforded a lot of mistakes. One play mistake he can really take over the game. But that's also, in my opinion, inherently where he's weak, right? So if you're playing against a solid opponent that doesn't make blocking mistakes, then Katsu is a very difficult time to pull it out.
Well, right? and that's the thing too, is like I didn't make any like egregious play mistakes, but I think that I didn't get the maximum value out of my pitch, and I didn't get maximum value out of my armor and my armor blocks, I should say. And I think that if I had done that differently, I think I would have won. He was also like he was pretty good too. I actually I played it before at a skirmish that I top aided. And then and he was on, I think he was on like Bolton or something. He was just kind of messing around at that skirmish, I think. But he's a good player. And he had actually was really impressed. So he had actually pitched all of his razor reflexes early, and he had attacked me with a lot of his combo pieces, so that he was basically pitching and attacking and blocking so that he would be able to set up for a big Lord of the Wind turn. Or in this case, he set up for, on his last turn, or on his last two turns, he razor reflexed me, but I was like still alive, and I like made some shields and survived. And then I came at him for a couple damage, and then he double razor reflexed me on his last turn. I'm like, that's something where it's like he had to mindfully pitch his razors, and I can't even be mad. It's like my hat just goes off to him. He's also just like a really, really nice guy and super fun to play. So, yeah, I honestly forgot his name. I think it's Matt or something. Anyway, I'll give him a shout out when I figure out his name, because he's super cool guy, and hopefully he'll listen to this one day and hear that I thought he was really nice.
Yeah, Matthew. Yeah, I've played against him a couple times. He's a good guy. He plays Katsu.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, Matthew. I think it's because there's two Matthews there, which is funny too. There's like Matt P and then Matt. I'm just doxing all of my opponents apparently. So yeah, do you have anything else that you wanted to share about your week in Flesh and Blood before we kind of dive into Team Galaxy Brain a little bit? Who we are, what we do.
About TGB, a little bit. I remember that we being myself, you, Tim, and Eli were hanging out at PGS. That's Portland Game Store here in Portland, and I remember you were playing Bravo. I was on Ira, and Eli had just started picking up Lexi, if I recall correctly. And you and I were accustomed to just kind of crushing everybody, and then along comes Eli, and he's just playing super sharp. He's playing really well with Lexi. He's doing the cycle up, cycle down turns. And I think it was you that said, "Hey, you guys, we should get in a playtest group."
Yeah,
I was like, "Sweet, yeah, let's do it." And then as time went on, we realized that one, we're pretty good players, and two, we're just awesome people. So we started to bring in other awesome people, right? And other people that love to improve and play Flesh and Blood, and that had some level of I want to say, I don't know if maturity is the right word, but perhaps a certain level of social interest in the group to want to know and meet everybody and be more than just a card playtest group. We've been to each other's birthday parties, and we support each other outside of Flesh and Blood and whatever that means. So it's a pretty cool team. I like to think of it as more a group of people who rely on each other than anything else, and then we all have a common interest in the card game, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's I remember that. Yeah, I don't know if there was like ever a specific point where we're like, oh yeah, we're like a team now, but like I think that we had. I remember specifically one night where I was on Bravo, I think, and you were like watching a game between me and Eli, And Terra Sunder had just come out, and like I didn't realize like that I could do it with Anathos. And you just after the game, you're like, hey, I think you might have won that game if you had just like Terra Sundered and then Anathos. And then we had this moment where I was like, oh shit, that's really cool. And then like afterwards, we were talking, and I was like, yeah, like I've got kids, but I'm like, I love to grind card games. And you're like, I've got kids, and I love to grind card games. And then like, Eli is like, I'm Eli, and because he doesn't have kids. That's the joke. Anyway, but yeah, and then I was like, let's start a Discord server and just like, talk Flesh and Blood. And we did. And then, yeah, we started inviting other people. I don't know if I can name them all. I mean, I probably can. Let's see. So we invited Archer, Sky, Christian, Ken, which, we don't get to see a lot of Ken, but he's a nice guy. And then, did I say Christian? I said Christian. What am I missing here? Probably just look at our team channel, but Natan, of course, yeah. And yeah, they're all like, I think that's kind of, like I said, that was kind of our criteria for inviting people in, right? Is like they want the mindset to improve. Like Archer started playing around Tails, and but yeah, he just had this like really like he had a desire to improve, and he was really critical of all his plays in a kind of in a pretty good way for the most part. And so yeah, we invited him, and same with Sky. Like Sky's really great. He made the finals of a Road to Nationals or ProQuest. I guess it must have been Road to Nationals, but yeah. And I mean, I think just to kind of wrap up this segment, we just realized that we all kind of had a desire to create some content. We're starting this podcast. We're eventually going to start doing some gameplay videos when we figure out kind of a cadence. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a little background on Team Galaxy Brain, and I think we're going to start expanding some of the stuff we're doing. I know that we're talking to Fable Hobby about getting like some playmats and maybe some jerseys and stuff like that. So exciting times. But yeah, I don't want to be like the Flesh and Blood news podcast, but there wasn't really any news this week that I know of. I know that Drew Cordell wrote a really nice article for the Flesh and Blood website, where he talks about the ProQuest Season 2, Week 2 metagame breakdown. He has really nice like pie charts of the total overall meta. He has one that is the top 8 meta, and then he has one that is the winners meta. And then at the very end, he breaks it down with a chart that has things like top 8 conversions, top 8 to win percentages. So lots of really, really good data. So I'll get your opinion on this, Carl, but the first thing I wanted to say is I love that LSS is all about sharing data. I know that in games I've played previous, like in Magic the Gathering, for example, Wizards can be like very stingy about their data. I remember when the website like MTG Goldfish first started, they were doing like win percentages and stuff. So like, just is 50-50 against blue-white control based on like, everybody's findings. And Wizards, was like, hey, cut it out. So they're kind of like really scared of data and like people breaking the meta and stuff. But, that is what it is. All this to say that I love that Legend Story Studios has really leaned into, we know it's going to happen and we want to share it because it'll make our game better. So what do you think about, I don't know if you saw the article, Carl, but what do you think about the ProQuest meta and the top 8 conversions and things like that?
I haven't seen that article yet, but I'll give kind of my perspective on it. And I don't know that everybody would necessarily agree with me. And first, I think Wizards is scared of data because they have a card game that has some inherent problems. Even Richard Garfield has mentioned that, the man and land system today just isn't the way a strategic card game should be built anymore. But that neither here nor there. I'm not trying to say Flesh and Blood is better than Magic or Magic better than Flesh and Blood. That's not the point. The point is just that that's a little bit why they're scared of the data, is because it's hard to balance a game that has 57,000 cards in it. And I think that might be the low end for Magic. And then what does that look like? And I know there's standard rotations in Modern, Legacy, and such, but anyway, point I'm trying to get at is that I personally believe that the skill gap in Flesh and Blood between two players can be so vast, even compared to Magic, that it completely blows any meaning out of the water for like conversion rates, for example. So let's talk about Kano at the actual Pro Tour, piloted by Alexander Vor. Alexander Vor didn't choose Kano because he thought it would be a good meta pick. Arsenal Pass did, and they did pretty solid. I think one of them got top 8, if I remember right. That was, I think, Sasha's on the Arsenal Pass team.
Yeah, I think it was Sasha Markovic got top 8 on Kano.
Yeah, right. So, but the point I'm getting at is that Alex is an incredible Kano player. That's all he does. He knows it in and out, and he's doing the math before he ever gets to the carts, right? So that's the kind of Kano player you need to be in order to top 8 an event like that. And then he had to get a little bit lucky, right, with the deck choice. And it speaks to an incredible conversion rate. But if we had 40 Kanos there, it doesn't mean we're going to have the same. I think it was like 20 to 30% conversion rate that we saw out of the Kanos. Oh, it'd probably be higher than that. If we look at like day 2, it was like 40% conversion rate for day 2, right? For Kano, which is insane.
Right,
which is
something
insane.
like that.
Yeah. So, Starvo, I think, was like 25, and that's a lot for conversion rate.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is that I think that the skills dictate so much about how you end up that it's really hard to take that data unless you have just thousands and thousands of data points. Because if we talk about like Reinar at a recent ProQuest, I think there was like some 50 people there. There's only 2 people playing Reinar. One lost immediately, did really terrible, and another one got top 8. But this is one of the best Flesh and Blood players that I know, right? So there's something to be said for just being an incredible Flesh and Blood player and then piloting the right deck as well. So anyway, that's kind of my perspective on what does that mean and how does that work out for a like standings and what the win percentages are. And this is completely independent of just a meta, right? A meta is a pie chart of who's taking what heroes to the tournament. You guys all know this, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who's taking what. I'm talking about like specifically top 8ing, conversion rates, stuff like that. Because and if you look at like, I don't know, Tyler Horse was a great example. He won in Las Vegas around when I started playing Flesh and Blood, so he stands out to me. He's a great player. He's a very good player. But I tell you what, Tim, he puts his pants on the same way I do every morning. We both can play cards just as well as Tyler Horspool can. A lot of people seem to idolize these really great players. And if you look, he hasn't gotten first in another event. So yes, he's highly skilled. There's a lot of highly skilled people, and I'm trying to speak to the meta choices, because if you look, he's still also only playing Prism, right? And very, very rarely you see some of those tops kind of change. So anyway, I don't know if you're catching the point I'm getting at, is that I think the skill gap between player to player is just so large and makes such a big impact that it's hard to take that and like with it from a conversion rate standpoint.
Totally. And I mean, that's a really good point. I think that, yes. And there's like, man, I could talk about like goal analysis for a long time. Like it's something that like my wife gets annoyed at me, because that's actually one of the things that not statistical analysis, but like quantitative analysis and also quantitative analysis. I won't dive into this, but that's part of what she does, and she gets annoyed at me sometimes because I like bug her about like, well, how would you like analyze this set of data or whatever. She's like, oh, you're just making me work at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. Okay. But I think that, you could take a lot of things away from this, but I think that as far as the numbers go, like I think that this meta looks really healthy. And this is the first thing I'll say about it. And then I have some kind of comment on what you've said. So like the 3 top decks for overall meta, there is 15, 15, and 15 basically. So like, 45% of the meta is the top 3 decks. I think that's great. I think that an ideal meta is 3 top paper scissors, which I think this kind of is, but I think they're all pretty even with each other. At the end of the day. And then there's some decks that prey on 2, but not 3 of the decks, basically. So I think that this meta is actually pretty awesome now that we've had, the bans and everything. I know that a lot of people probably disagree with me, but, and then the top 8 meta is, you basically just see a little bit of an expansion on their, the slices of their pie. Bravo has a 23.8% conversion into top 8, which is actually pretty insane. Prism has an 18%, and then Chain has a 19% conversion rate. So those are all pretty good. And then, just looking at conversion from top 8 to win, it's Bravo has a 33% conversion from top 8 to win. Chain has a 29% conversion from top 8 to win, and Prism has a 15%. So, I think that these are like the overall meta looks awesome to me. It gets a little bit dicey when you get into the winning meta and the top 8 meta and see how good Chain and Starvo are. But I think there's a few things, right? Like, I think that when you're taking this data into account, I think you got to look at a couple things. One is, yes, you got to look, or at least think about, rather, because sometimes it's not always visible. You got to think about what did that Starvo player that won the PQ play? Like, did you just play?
Right.
Did he play? Did he play Azalea for 5 rounds? Like, obviously not, because nobody plays Azalea. Did he play his most favorite matchup every round? Like, did he high roll? Whatever. And then there's other things too, like how skilled is this player? Like, I think that like a Starvo player can be like, LOL, like I'm just gonna casino, right? And then there's also Starvo players that like, I'm gonna set up my pitch stack. I'm going to like really control this game and set up so that I can fuse, and then have a big turn at the end, right? Like, or I can fatigue my opponent. Like somebody who has been playing Starvo and has had the reps on the Starvo, knows how to utilize Crown of Seeds, stuff like that, is going to see a vast increase in their win percentage. But it's like also taking into account that Starvo is kind of a powerful hero, right? And yeah, sometimes you can just go LOL, fuse. But I, like all that being said, I think that there's just a lot of things you have to take into account. I think there's local metas as well. I know that in our local meta, like there's people that only ever play Prism. There's people that only ever play Azalea. There's people that only play Chain. So I think that's something to take into account. But in my opinion, just at a glance, the numbers look fine. I won't be sad to see Starvo go, but
yeah, part of that also, and I think why most people are very happy with Starvo, it's very uninteractive when you're losing. So, as right. The opponent to the Starvo. So, if they, like you said, if they just lull fuse every turn, you didn't really get to do anything, and they won the game, and it's not really fun for anyone. Now, I wanted to touch a little bit on what you said. It's yeah, we talked about high skill. There's also luck, especially in a deck like Starvo. Now, I think that luck is mitigated a lot more in Flesh of Blood because of the pitch stacking and intelligent shuffling when you do it right and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the top player and the Pro Tour has to, one, be good, first and foremost, 2, get lucky. That is lucky in your matchups, right, and potentially your draws, and then win like the matchup lottery we talked about, right? So it reminds me of one time, I played WoW TCG years ago, and they had, I don't know if you've heard of Spectral Tiger. It's like an $8,000 card now or something. But I was in a 500 person tournament for Spectral Tiger, and I remember saying the night before, because it was a sealed event, the player who's going to win is going to get Warlock, and they have to be good. So they have to get lucky and they have to be good, and that'll put them on top. Now, I'm not trying to discredit being good, but it can't be everything either, right? So I did end up winning that tournament, and I was a good player, and I got Warlock. So right, it's just how it works out. But anyway, I don't know where I was really going with that, but yeah. Yeah, right on. Exactly.
No, I mean, what's the saying though? It's like luck is where preparation and opportunity cross paths. That being said, going on from the ProQuest, there's one more week of ProQuest. I think it's the next week, and I think I'm actually going to be able to make it out, which is exciting. I am leaning towards Prism, but just like knee-jerk reaction, Carl, what would you play going into next week?
I'll be there too, and I'll be playing Chain. So I've been we talked about that last time about the Pro Tour. My chain isn't going to be exactly like the Pablo one.
Mhm.
I personally don't like yellow boundings. Neither is Archer. Archer's definitely our chain kind of master on the team.
Yeah.
But I wanted to try them out. They're kind of underwhelming. You have to have like an Art of War turn or be using a minimalism on them. But anyway, so yeah, I'll be playing chain. Prism, I think, is a solid choice as well. You and I have tested Prism to chain.
Yeah.
I think it's favored to chain, but not necessarily by a huge margin.
Not by a lot, right? It's like it feels really close, especially like the better the chain player is, I think the closer the matchup is. And also there's a lot of tech choices you can make on the Prism side too. Like I know that like Tyler Horsepool went like 4-1 into chain at the Pro Tour. And he was running like 3 sigils, 2 fate foreseen, 3 sink belows. Yeah. And I don't know if he was going on the fatigue plan necessarily, but he was also running like 3 blue impenetrable beliefs, which is just a card that it's like it's a 2 cost for 3 attack. With 2 block, but if the opponent has banished 3 or more cards, it blocks for 4 instead of 2. So that's like some sweet tech, but like, and it's a light card, so like if you wanted to like put it into your soul from Genesis or whatever, like it sort of synergizes. But all this to say, yeah, I think Chain's a reasonable choice as well, and I think it's a close matchup with Prism. There is, of course, the Bravo star of the show in the room, but I think that like if something went wrong, like if we had like done a bunch of testing this week and I was like, man, I am just like not feeling Prism anymore, I would default back to Starvo. Like he's worse without Autumn's Touches and Awakening, obviously, but like I still feel really comfortable like maximizing Crown of Seeds and like blocking with Rampart at the right time and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, I still think Starvo is a super choice, and well, may we meet in the finals, and may you lose, I guess. I hope you do super well until we meet in the finals and I win.
Either way, TGB wins. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah,
I know, right?
That's something that I've been impressed with is every single tournament we've been at, except for maybe like the one ProQuest. Even then, we've either gotten first or at least top 8 if it's a bigger event, right? So so that's kind of cool. It's neat to rep that for the local events. Pro Tours and Calling's a little bit different. It's 500-600 people, but for everything local, we are crushing every single event we go to.
Well, I remember that awesome. Like that skirmish I mentioned earlier too. Like it was Archer and myself and Christian, and we drove out to Discs and Dice here in Portland, and we all top 8'd, and that was so awesome. And then the next day there was another skirmish, I think at like Wayward or something like that. And then you and 2 other people all went out there, and then like everybody in the car top 8'd as well. And I was like, all right. So it felt very good. And then the last thing, and we're kind of going over like a little bit here on our time, but let's just get your quick hits. This is the end of the Tales Everfest kind of meta. We'll just go like a quick, we'll say give it a rating out of 10. Like, how did you feel about just kind of everything from the set flavor to how much did you enjoy it? The sets, I should say. What did you think the competitive scene was like?
Yeah, sure. So, I don't know. I think my opinion might be a little unpopular, but I didn't like Everfest. I didn't particularly enjoy this meta. I did not enjoy playing against Starvo. I've come to know a lot of the local players, and when one of the new local guys picks up Starvo and says, "Hey, this is a deck," and then just crushes you with it, it doesn't feel good, right? So personally, I did not particularly enjoy this meta. I really liked, believe it or not, I really liked when Viserai and CC was doing well.
Oh, me too.
I didn't feel like it was insane for CC. Blitz was a problem for Viserai. I recall on turn 2, with 5 cards and 2 rune chance dealing 46 damage. That shouldn't happen, right?
I think that was abysmal. Yeah. I think that's the only like problem. That's the only real problem that I had with this meta for Blitz and Classic Constructed. Like, I don't think Starvo was healthy for the game necessarily, especially because I feel like his skill floor was so low, and his ceiling was like it was a really good deck, but the skill floor was like low enough that most people could pick it up and do reasonably well with it. Like It's not like, it's not like Kano or whatever where you pick it up and you have to get a bunch of reps with it and know all the lines. Like you just kind of like, well, I guess I'll fuse and crush you for 7 and then come in for 8. And then, it doesn't feel good. I think that's what it comes down to, is the experience is bad. And then, I actually really like Blitz in general. And I love Blitz. I think it's really fun. It's fast. You can play a 7-round tournament in like 4 hours. It's like, it's insane. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think the only time that I had a problem with this format was just Viserai and Blitz. And then like everybody that was ever on Viserai that I talked to was like, I think Vis is fine. I'm like, you have clearly not played the other side of this matchup, because it's like it's absurd, right? Like when you go first as Oldhim and you like arsenal a card and you have defense reactions for and you go through the motions and like you block out everything, you pitch to block the arcane where you can, whatever. Like you go through all these things and you like go back and look at the turn and you're like, well, I blocked as much damage as I could, which is 22 damage, and I still died. Like it's like that should never happen. And it's it is what it is. It's in Living Legend now, so there's no use griping about it. But
sure.
But yeah, I agree. I think I loved Tales of Aria. I know that there were some kind of overpowered cards in that set, but like it balanced out in the end. And I loved the flavor. I loved all the heroes. I didn't ever really get to draft that set, but it was awesome. And then I think Everfest like was fine, but I didn't really particularly enjoy the flavor of the set as much as I did Tales or like Arcane Rising or whatever.
Agreed.
It was just kind of like goofy, and like some of the cards were like really problematic. So, it is what it is. But like I enjoyed the set. It just wasn't my favorite. I think it's probably my least favorite of all the sets so far.
Sure.
So we're a little bit over on our intended time here, but that's totally fine. Do any closing remarks, Harl, before we head into the ProQuest and duel to the death?
Yeah. No, thanks for listening, everybody. Tim, looking forward to seeing the top 8. So
yeah, me too.
Looking forward to the next discussion. I was thinking for the future that we could start maybe talking about individual heroes or potential, advice for new players, some things to look forward to as we move forward.
Well, and like we were saying earlier with Team Galaxy Brain too, it's like we have like, I don't want to say we have specialists on our team, but like you're insane at draft and sealed. Archer is like insane playing chain. Sky is really good with Viserai. Natan is awesome with Oldhim. Eli is really good with Lexi. Like we have a lot of like people who are really strong with particular heroes and play styles, and I would love to do like a series where we just kind of dive into like we can get Natan on here, dive into Guardian, that kind of thing. So for those of you listening at home, let us know in the comments or, email us at podcast@teamgb.net and let us know your suggestions, any comments. Let us know how you like the show, or just email us and say hi. Or the Enlightened Mike podcast at Enlightened-Mike. That's spelled MIC on Twitter. All right, cool. Well, it's time to wrap this up. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I was about to tell you to say goodbye again.